Hi everyone, welcome back to the 21 and Sensory podcast with me, Emily. My special guest is the lovely Rachel Charlton-Dailey. Rachel is an award-winning disabled editor, journalist, activist, and more recently, an author. She is a disability rights columnist for the Daily Mirror, where she guest edited the series Disabled Britain. Rachel writes mainly about disability and women's rights, and her work has featured in publications such as HuffPost, The Guardian, Glamour, and The Big Issue. Her specialisms are political issues affecting disabled people, disability in the media, and the gender health gap. Her first book, Ruby Hastings Writes Her Own Story, was published by Collins Big Cat on January 8th. When Rachel isn't writing, she can be found walking her sausage dog, Rusty, which I am definitely going to have to ask her about. So, Rachel, do you want to say hi?
Hi. First things first, Rusty isn't here right now. I only have him 4 days a week.
No.
Otherwise, there would be a cameo from Rusty at some point. But hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for being up for chatting on the 21 Sensory podcast. And I'm really excited to talk a bit more about your background and your book. So I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about.
Yes, I'm very excited.
So maybe we should start with I don't know, a bit of a background to you, and if you feel comfortable, maybe kind of chatting about your dyspraxia diagnosis, because I know that kind of relates to the book you've written as well. So yeah, maybe just tell us where you're at in life.
So I am as you've already done the fantastic introduction. I'm a disability rights journalist, but I also am now an author. I I I quite often do editing both for my own websites and things like guest editing, things like the Daily Mirror series that I got to do a couple of years ago. I'm quite starting to dip into public speaking, which I'm enjoying because people seem
Ooh.
to think I'm a good public speaker, which this is not displaying well at all.
No, no, no.
um, yeah, but I started out basically as a blogger well over a decade ago, and then I started writing for free for other people's websites, and then places like the Metro got in touch with me and asked me to write for them, and
Mhm.
I slowly just kept building and building and building, and then the pandemic happened, and I was really lucky that I was one of the few. I say lucky, it was awful. I was one of the few disabled journalists who was starting to make their name, so I was reporting from the very beginning of COVID. Then I founded my own website, The Unwritten, which we're on a hiatus at the moment, to give other disabled people the chance to get their stories out there because it's so hard in the media.
Mhm.
And then I got asked to do no, I didn't get asked. I got asked if I knew any disabled writers who would like to be involved in a disability series for the media, and I went, oh, that's really funny. What you guys really need is a disabled editor. Oh, what a coincidence. I'm a disabled editor.
Hello there.
Yeah, that was literally what I said. They took me on as the editor, and like my whole career has just snowballed since. I won in between that. I won a British Journalism Award for The Unwritten, and since then, like that was literally 2 years ago. My career, was it 2 years ago? Was it 3 years ago now? It was 2000. It was the end of 2021, so it was 3 years ago now.
Okay.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
The maths.
We're at the beginning of 2024, aren't we? So it was just over 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, and literally like my career has just gone like like super speed since then, and I'm now one of the few. I would say I'm one of. I hate to say this. I'm one of the biggest disability rights journalists in the UK. Somehow, don't know how
Yeah.
that really happened to me, but it's happened.
No, and also don't hate to say it,
Yeah.
shout about it. It's great.
One of those things where you say like, "Oh yeah, I'm one of the biggest disability rights journalists," and people go, well, "What about this person? What about this person? What about this person?" And I'm like, "Yes, they are also doing my job."
Yeah.
Um, so I've got quite a few diagnoses and things that are not diagnosed as well. But was
Mhm.
dyspraxia was my first diagnosis. Actually, I was diagnosed
Oh.
with dyspraxia when I was 9.
Mhm.
And it was literally because I was being bullied in school a lot. I was being bullied because I was different, because I was always uh, because I would fall over a lot, so I was quite an easy target. And also my handwriting was really bad, and I wasn't very good at sports and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
it just so happened that we had a supply teacher who I later found out he had dyspraxia. So he spotted the traits, and he was like, "Oh,
Ah.
you should probably take her to the doctor because I think she's got." And we didn't really know what dyspraxia was at the time because I was 8 when he recommended it, and I was 9 when I got the diagnosis. But this was what, 1999?
Mhm.
Yeah, about no, that lot would have been 10 in 99. So 98, 98, 99-ish. So, and like it wasn't really a thing that girls were diagnosed with, and it wasn't a thing that a lot of people had a lot much understanding about in the late 90s.
Mhm.
So, so I was diagnosed with it, and I had to basically we learned nothing about the neurodevelopmental side of it at all. We were just told that it meant I was clumsy, that it meant I had crap motor skills, that I couldn't ride a bike, and that I couldn't catch a ball. And I had physio. That was the only treatment for it was physio.
Mhm.
And it was literally only as I got older and I saw more neurodivergent people online talking about the different things that were affected by their dyspraxia that I was like, oh, that's why I'm like that. That's why I'm really rude. Or people think I'm really rude. That's why I'm quite blunt. That's why I get really angry and like this huge sense of how wrong you have done, like this thing that you have done that is so wrong towards me. Uh,
Mhm.
this is why you say a sentence to me and then I go and I hear it back as I'm saying you know, like things that had never been explained to me because I was just told that it meant I was clumsy.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'm going to move on to the book a little bit, but properly in a little bit. I was asked to write the book by HarperCollins.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't really know what to write about, but I'd quite like to do, because they asked me to do something on physical disability. I was like, I've hardly ever seen girls represented with dyspraxia.
Mhm.
And it was through writing the book, to be honest, like processing all the things that I'd kept hidden for so long and not being able to unmask. Because I'd sort of reconciled all of these things that happened in my childhood and happened as I was like growing up as well, and being quite ashamed of being neurodivergent, that I
Mhm.
was able to unmask so much more. Like in the last, because I finished it in June, and through writing it April, May, June, uh, I just feel how much more I've unmasked.
Oh, okay.
It
That's interesting.
wasn't what I was expecting at all, just how much the book helped me to unmask. And that's where I am now, like a fully unmasked ridiculous human, because I wrote a book about my childhood experiences, or the experiences I wish I had as a child in a lot of ways as well.
Because I noticed as well that Ruby is 9 years old,
Mm.
and it was kind of around that age that you were diagnosed as well. So,
Yeah, so Ruby was originally 9, and then we realised we had to age her up because I don't know, it just wasn't. She just wasn't reading the right age. She ended up
oh, okay.
11. She ended up 11 in the final copy, but
Ah.
she was 9 to start with. There might still be spots where it says she's 9 because we had to hastily go, okay, she's not reading as 9. But yeah, we wanted it very much to be around the same age as me, and have it quite similar to me,
Mhm.
that she's got a lot of support and she's got a lot of people who it was never a case of making her feel like she has to change,
Mhm.
because she's got this huge support system around her, like from her family, her aunt, her dad, her sister, her best friends, like all of this. And it was never, I always wanted the book to be about, never that, sorry, I never wanted the book to be that disabled kids can do anything. I wanted it to be disabled kids can do these things, they can succeed if they're given the tools and they're given the support.
Mhm.
That's what I always wanted from to write, because it's what I would have wanted to read when I was little, and to be
Mhm.
told that there wasn't anything wrong with me.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you, like, how did you sort of, was it kind of, did you know that you wanted to write a book? I know you said you were approached to write a book, but was
Mhm.
this kind of while you were on hiatus kind of thing? Or like
No,
when did this
no.
start?
So I was at, so I was approached to write. So I already had the idea of writing a different book, and that's eventually again that's way down the line now. So I wanted
Oh.
to write a book on the gender pain gap, which I'm going to do eventually.
Okay.
But we've got other plans, and I'm not allowed to talk about the other plans because my agent would
Oh, we
come
got
here.
loads in the works.
Just appear and murder me, to be honest with you. She wouldn't, but she does have this fantastic habit of whenever I start talking about the secret plans that I'm not supposed to, I'll get a text message or I'll get so we were it's
She's
a
on
really
to
funny
you.
story. It's a really funny story. I'm sorry, this is a tangent, but I was asked by Louis, who did my online launch for Ruby, what's next, and Carol was on the Carol was in the meeting, and she literally like everybody had their cameras off because it was an event, and she literally just turned her camera on and looked at me. I was like, oh my god, turn the camera on.
You're like, okay.
Okay, I'm not going to talk about it. No, so I originally went to Caro, my agent, with a idea for a non-fiction, which is going to be in the works in a few years now because we've got other stuff happening. But it's about the gender pay gap and medical misogyny,
Okay.
and and then around the same time as that, I got approached by HarperCollins, and they 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 do this because it's an educational imprint, and they send it out to specific people because cat books that look like me. No, that's not what it's called. I'm
Oh,
going to do that
okay.
again. Big cats books like me.
Oh, okay.
They specifically want it to be written by the people that the series are about. So they do different series, and they do ones again to do with LGBTQ people. They do stories specifically that have black characters, different ethnic minority characters and stuff like that. And they
Okay.
do physically disabled. They do different sections, and they do fiction and non-fiction, and it's it's that thing of, when you're at school and you do guided reading or
Yes. Yeah.
comprehension, what it was known as when I was at school. That's what Ruby is essentially, because she's got like questions at the back, and
Um,
you've got to link it all together and stuff.
mhm.
So they asked me if I had ever considered writing a book. And I was like, yeah, I would fucking love to write a book. Don't know about a kids book. Don't know what I'm gonna write a kids book about. And then they said physical disabilities, and it was as I was thinking more and more about dyspraxia, because I was seeing so much to do with neurodivergent stuff online. I was like, I literally can't remember ever really reading uh much to do like much kid stories that involve dyspraxia. I know Elle McNichol, one of her stories, has got a dyspraxic main character.
That's the only one
Uh,
I can think of.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally, I think that's like a charm and like a curse.
Yeah.
Her character Rhea is dyspraxic.
Mhm.
Literally, that's all I can think of that have got dyspraxic characters, really. Um, so I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then the story came along that, like, oh, because I wanted to be a journalist when I was little, but I was told that I couldn't be a journalist when I was little because I literally decided not to pursue journalism at university because I didn't think that I could write very well, and I didn't think I would do very good at telling stories and stuff, which is ridiculous because all I do is tell stories.
Yeah. That's
um,
mad.
so, but then I wanted to tell a story that was not just about a kid, but also hark back to that adult who is quite comfortable in who she is as a disabled person and does things differently,
Mhm.
and is also a journalist. And my friends all call me Susie because really, essentially, I am Susie Starling. For all I don't want to admit it, I'm Susie. Yeah, but no. So they asked me if I wanted to do that. I said, yeah, I would love to. I'm in the middle of sorting things out with my agent, and my agent got involved just so that we could keep the money stuff separate because, as part of dyspraxia, money isn't real.
Yeah.
I can't really do maths or money.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, please sort that out. It took a while to sort all the contracts and stuff. We signed the contracts in April, literally the exact same day that we signed the contracts, my marriage broke down. So that
Oh,
was great.
bless you.
Yeah, my marriage
Oh,
broke down on the night of me signing the contract. So I
my
had to
God.
move back to my childhood home where I'd experienced all of growing up as a dyspraxic child and not being understood as a dyspraxic. Not being in a world that wasn't built for me. I mean, my
Yeah.
parents were great, but it was very much a world that wasn't built for me. So the turnaround of these books is very quick because they're literally only 50 odd pages. So
Right.
I signed the contract in April. The book was due in June,
Wow.
middle of June, end of
Okay.
July, middle of June, July-ish. So I literally spent pretty much every day in my childhood bedroom writing a story about my childhood. And that
Oh,
was just so weirdly healing, but
okay.
also being able to unmask and having that space where I'm trying to figure out who I am as a person
Hmm.
whilst unmasking, whilst dealing with all of the childhood things that I buried down for so long. Yeah, it was fun. It was a trip. It was a massive
I
trip, to be
bet.
honest. And then we got the editors and we got the illustrators involved and everything. And a really big thing that I was really keen on doing was the audiobook version, because again, like people who like, you don't have just like kids in stories and kids in books and kids in adaptations don't sound like me.
Hmm.
Like they don't like, so I really wanted her to be non-explicitly northern as well.
Hmm.
Like there's little hints that are being northern just in the language and stuff like that, but I wanted her to sound like me.
Yeah.
So I did the audiobook. That was the final piece of the puzzle, doing the audiobook, because it took so like getting the edits and the illustration and stuff, and then we
Yeah.
did the audiobook literally. God, when was it? The audiobook was the big very the I think it was the 1st or 2nd of December, the very beginning of
Oh,
December.
okay.
Then she went that, and that was while that was the same week Ruby went to print. So she went to print. We did the audiobook, and then she came out on the 8th of on the 8th of January, and she was completely done. And it was literally just like a couple of days before Christmas I got to hold her in my hand.
Oh,
And it was, yeah, it's been a very untraditional publishing like through the
yeah.
whole thing of publishing. But it's been incredible. Like I feel like I've been completely thrown into the fire, because with it being an educational imprint, it's not something that goes, you have educational and then you have trade, and trade is the mass marketed stuff, the stuff that goes into actual bookshops and is publicized and all of that.
Hmm.
So I had to do all of the publicity myself, because these books really they're made just for schools, but I knew how important this was going to be to a lot of adults and a lot of
Yeah.
people who wanted this book for their kid, which is not really what Big Cat are used to. That's not really what they do. They do mostly for schools. So I had to do all the marketing, I had to do all of all of this stuff. Like
Mm.
none of it's been organized by my publisher or anything like that. Um, and it's been a lot. But considering like I've had no marketing budget or anything, that she got to the top of an Amazon bestsellers list, well, several Amazon bestsellers lists, was absolutely incredible.
I
I was
saw
like,
that.
how has this happened? She was in the top 20 of overall new kids books at one point.
Which is mad.
Absolutely unreal. Yeah, absolutely unreal. She was the bestseller of physically disabled kids books,
Hmm.
non-fiction books with disabilities, which it wasn't a non-fiction, fiction
Amazing.
kids books with disabilities, new kids books. She was just, yeah, she was top of all of these charts, and I was like, we've had no promotion. It's literally just me being a dick on Twitter and Instagram. How has this happened? Like, it sold out, and the publishers weren't prepared for it to sell out, because these books don't really sell out on Amazon and stuff like that. They
Amazing.
were preparing to do it. They were preparing to do another restock like a month later, and I was like, people who have ordered the book don't have the book. We ended up doing a restock the next day, when usually it takes like a month for these books to sell out when they first go
Oh.
when they're first published, because
Mhm.
they're not even like, they don't even follow the traditional publishing schedule, because publish books are always published on a Thursday, whereas because it was an educational imprint, it was published on a Monday. So
Right. Okay.
it was competing with books that had already been out a week, a
Right.
few days by that point, and she was
My
still getting
God.
to the top of all of these charts. I didn't understand. I mean, I was higher than people like Adam Hills, Rosie Jones. I was higher than Christine McGuinness, and I was just sat there like, how? I've got no budget at all. It's literally me being a dick on Twitter and my agent making posters on Canva.
Amazing. But it doesn't that just show that it's,
The power of the
people are
community.
in, yeah, but also people are invested in you and what you have
Yeah,
to say,
I feel
and
like it really showed how much people needed this book because a lot of
yeah.
adults told me how much they needed this book, but also a lot of my friends that have got kids were telling me how much they needed this book. So
Mhm.
two of my really close friends have got kids who are 10 and 12, and they were sending me pictures of them with the books. One of them wrote me a little review, and it
Aw.
was it was just absolutely lush, like to see both, because one of them is neurodivergent, one of them isn't. Both to see neurodivergent and neurotypical kids just absolutely loving this book, and
Um,
it was really, really incredible, but really, really bizarre that I was getting the sort of publicity that I just never expected to get.
I think that's amazing though,
I
and
think it's
like,
lovely. It's absolutely
yeah.
lovely because I always go back to it. It was literally just from me being a dick on Twitter. Like it was, there was no posters. It wasn't sent out in advance. It didn't get like proofreaders or advanced readers. It didn't get blurbed by famous people.
Yeah.
Most people, because of the stuff that went on with the publishing and it's selling out. Most people didn't even get it for the first few days, and it was still an Amazon bestseller when people couldn't physically receive it.
I'm
People were
just
still buying it.
imagining just the publishers being like, "What?"
They
Like
genuinely didn't. I get the massive sense that they didn't have a clue what to do. But bearing in mind, I'd been telling them, because I'd been telling them for like, I'd been told to manage my expectations for a year, but at the same time I was like, yeah, but I'm really sorry, but this is not just me blowing me on trumpet. This is gonna sell in markets you weren't expecting it to sell.
Yeah. And I think when I was doing some research on you, that sounds really stalkerish, but I promise it isn't. Um, I was listening to, I think you were on the Disabled and Proud podcast.
Yes, I
And
was. That was
yeah,
really fun.
it was a really great episode. So shout out to that podcast.
Mm.
But I remember you were talking about like how, the adjustments
Mm.
make things
Mhm.
not better for disabled people, they make them equal to
Equal,
like.
yeah, because so often when non-disabled people talk about adjustments that disabled people have, they treat it like we're getting special treatment. They're like, oh,
Mm,
you're after special treatment. You expect to get better than what we do, and you expect everything to be handed to you on a silver platter. It's like, no, I just like a platter.
mhm,
I just like to be able to get to the same spot that you are and have an equitable shot at this, like.
mhm.
And people think that we're asking for the world when we really just want the same opportunities that they do. We just need the changes and we need the adjustments so that we can have the same shot as them.
Mhm. And I remember you were also mentioning about like how, working from home, like
Mm,
it's something that,
mhm.
disabled people could have,
I,
benefited from years
I'm
ago.
literally. I mean, I could arguably do a part-time job, but the reason I'm still freelance, that I'm not a staff writer,
Mhm,
is because the majority of media jobs are in London offices, and they
mhm,
are in offices. I mean, the big reason I couldn't work in an office is strip lights. Strip lights are disgusting.
mhm,
They are horrible. They are painful. But it's just the expectation that especially in media jobs, that you've got to work like 12-hour shifts and it's got to be in a horrible office, and most of the time it's got to be in London. Like
mhm.
I could never do that. You couldn't. I mean, you couldn't pay us enough to move to London to start with.
But also like how I don't understand like these kind of, like writers' offices or
Mhm.
like writers' rooms, like how people concentrate because surely
No,
it's chaotic if it's open
yeah.
plan.
Oh, it is. It's like I spend so when we did Disabled Britain, I spent a day in the Mirror office, and
Oh,
it was
okay.
just out in the open. Like, it's a huge bank of desks. There's hundreds of computers in one room, and it's a huge
Oh.
room. It's actually. Do you watch Doctor Who?
Mhm.
So it's the Torchwood building.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Torchwood in London, because Canary Wharf is Torchwood. Well, it's
Oh.
it's that it's those huge rooms where Torchwood
Yeah.
is, and I was just
Oh.
stood there like looking out over Canary Wharf, and I was like, I'm in Torchwood, but also this is really terrifying. How many people are in this one office? And
Mhm.
you're right, like, I had one thing to edit and I had 2 things to edit and 1 thing to write, and it took me so long to do them, 'cause
Mhm.
it was just constantly people. I mean, it was also because I was like the special subject that day, so everybody was coming over and wanting to talk to me, but it was just so many people, there was just so much buzz, and there was constant conversation, like, it's
Mhm.
not neurodivergent friendly, but it's just not. I don't know, I honestly don't know how anybody manages to block the noise out. I
Mhm.
really don't, it's just so noisy constantly, and,
Yeah.
uh but yeah, it's, these are jobs. I mean, lockdown proved very easily how quickly, when it was profitable, that everybody
Yeah.
that everybody could move to working from home. But
Mhm.
we'd been, and it was, do you know what? It hurt so much seeing people who had dropped out of university because they were told they couldn't do it from home, whose courses then went online.
Yeah.
That was the big one. It hit, like, I saw so many people upset because they'd had to, like, they literally had dropped out of uni in January, and then their courses went online in March.
Mhm. I
Or
mean, I can't imagine how frustrating that would
Mhm.
be, like, just to see it carry on without you kind of thing.
But yeah, the amount of jobs that I was told, and it's gone back so quickly as well. Like,
I
it's really
know.
upsetting how quickly it's gone back, considering so many people work from home for so long, and
Mhm.
people, it proved to be more productive, and it proved to help people. I know a lot of people's mental health were affected, but working from home has helped people mentally, because it means
Yeah.
the big thing I love about working from home, and I've heard this from a lot of people who didn't typically used to work from home as well, is the freedom,
Mhm.
because you're not constantly chained to your desk and feeling like you've got to be focusing on this one thing. You can take breaks, you can go and do, you can go and put a wash on, you can go and make a cup there, and you
Mhm.
can do the other things and then get back to your work when it works, because the 9 to 5 just isn't, it's not productive. It's not a realistic goal. It's really not. Like,
No.
I very rarely work 9 to 5 most time, because that's just not when I'm a productive human. And I know a lot of people are not productive during 9 o'clock in the morning, which is a crap time, all the way through to 5, with an
Yeah.
hour break in between.
And I love that in your email signature, you're like, I work like,
Mhm. So
slightly different times to everyone else, but don't feel like you have to like reply. Like,
I got this idea from my good friend, Dr. Hannah Barham Brown, because she has got something very similar on her email signature. And when I read
oh,
it,
okay.
I was like, oh my God, that is revolutionary. I've never seen that
Yeah.
on an email before. Because I'd be replying to email, I'd be sending emails out at like 9 o'clock at night when my brain was working. And
Mhm.
people would be apologizing to me for not getting back to me until the next morning. And I'm like, it's 9 o'clock at night. Why would you be replying to me? Like,
And also, I feel like since the pandemic as well, like more people have started to do that where like they're like, I have like childcare hours almost, and you kind of know that those are kind of protected. And I just think like, why aren't we all doing this?
yeah,
Like,
I
let's
feel like
protect our time.
I feel like people have realised, like, I realised, especially, the friendships we want to pursue, what we want to be spending our time doing, and what we don't want to be spending our time doing, like, it,
Mhm.
because we had this time where, like, I feel like for disabled people especially, we had this time where it wasn't even a case of we couldn't, because it was that we couldn't leave our houses, but also that it wasn't safe to leave our houses, so we
Mhm.
were choosing very specifically almost what was worth leaving the house for.
Yeah.
And if I knew it was going to be somebody who didn't take my illnesses seriously, who wasn't prepared to mask, who wasn't, or who was going to be taking the mick out of the pandemic, or taking the mick essentially out of disabled people, I'm just like, no, I don't want to be spending time with you.
Mhm.
I probably did lose quite a few friends, but also, like, even the relationships, like, family wise, who I realized who I wanted to be around, like,
Mhm.
because if you're not going to take, after this long, if you're not going to take my disability seriously, you're not somebody I want to be around.
Mhm. I feel like we've chatted about a lot considering
Yeah,
it's
we
only been
managed
like
to get
20 minutes.
quick.
um, yeah, I was going to ask you because you mentioned about like you want to get into like speaking kind of more,
Mhm.
but you've already done quite a lot of public speaking, haven't you?
Kind of. So I did the Disability Wales conference. I did an event at Labour conference with Disabled Britain.
Mhm.
I chaired that, and that was bloody terrifying because I
Oh
did
my
not
god.
expect so many. It was one of the most popular fringe events at Labour conference that year, and people
Wow.
were going because they specifically it was the first time I realised that people knew who I was. My editor was handing out flyers, and he got asked if it was the Rachel Charlton-Dailey event, and I didn't believe him until somebody who was with him told me. I was like, "Nah, you're talking shite," and he was like, "No, ask such and such." I was like, and she was like, "Oh, right, did I?" They asked if it was the Rachel event, and I was like, "What?"
They're
That was the
coming
first
because
time
of you.
that was the first time I ever got asked for my autograph, and that was amazing. And bear in
Ooh.
mind that Sherry Lee Houston was also at that event, but people were asking if it was my event. That was quite incredible.
Amazing. We like move out the way.
About 5 shares, love you. Do you know what I do? Sherry Lee is one of those great people who, because we've worked together a couple of times now, Sherry Lee is one of those great people who will always hold at who loves what she does, but more than anything, she wants more disabled people to get into it as well, and that's what I want. You know, I never want to keep it for myself.
Yeah.
I I'm very much a ladder holder. I'm not gonna pull the ladder up after myself. I want other disabled people, other disabled journalists and people in media to have the same opportunities or better than what I have.
Mhm.
So, like, and that's very much what Sherry Lee does. Sherry Lee is what she wants more representation in soap. She wants more representation in TV in general, and yeah, and she's northern as well, so she's automatically a good egg. She's northern.
What's not to love?
She's, you know,
It's
yeah.
really that's really great, like you saying, like, because I feel like a lot of people,
Mhm.
when they're in very specific industries, can
Well,
kind of gatekeep it a bit.
I feel like a lot of it as well, because there is we've been told for so long that there's only a finite amount of opportunities, you know?
Mm,
And it's very much, "Oh, well, you know, we can only especially with freelancers, we can only afford this much work. We can only do we've already done this month, so we're not gonna get somebody else to do it," that sort of thing.
mhm.
And because they are so hesitant to make the industry so much more accessible, there is finite spaces. There's less opportunities for disabled people in media and disabled people everywhere, really. So a lot of the time, I think the competition, especially as women, because women are always taught that we have to compete with each other
Yeah.
for a lot of the stuff. So I think that does get to people, especially when they're trying to build their own career. They compare them, like I've done it a lot, compare myself to other journalists and being like, for instance, oh, why aren't I doing the things Frances Ryan's doing? Why aren't I doing the things Lucy Webster's doing? That's because Frances has got 10 years of experience on me. Lucy started out at The Guardian, you know that, and they are
Yeah.
great journalists, and I'm a great journalist at the same time. We've just had very different experiences. But
Mhm.
it's very easy to compare yourself to other people, and I think because there is that scare there has been we've been told that there's that scarcity and we can only have so many people, that people want it to be them, you know?
Yeah.
For all everybody talks about wanting everybody else to be in the industry, they also want to make sure that they're not left out of it at the same time.
Mhm.
And I think because disabled people are silenced so much, we want our voices to be heard. But my thing is, yeah, I want my voice to be heard, but I want, especially, I think this is because I don't come from a super privileged background. I come from the background where people who are usually speaking in the media don't sound like me. They,
Mhm.
for one thing, you know, they don't have my accent. They don't look like me. They don't that most people in the media are not disabled. And I want more people who are from who are northern, from a working class background, who don't have the same high level of education as most people who are in the media. I want more than anything. I want to share that. I don't ever want it to be, and it has been in the past. I don't ever want it to be that somebody will be told, "Oh, sorry, we've already got Rachel Charlton-Dailey." I want it to be
Yeah.
Rachel Charlton-Dailey recommended you to me.
Yeah, you
Like
want to.
I hate because I've heard it in the past. People have been told, "Oh, we've already got Rachel," and I'm like, "Oh, that's so shit." I want it to be, we've had Rachel, and we also want more of you guys as well, because
Yeah.
that was what was so important for me when we did Disabled Britain. I was like, in every as much as we can, I don't want it to be that we have two or three writers and they do all of the stories. I
Mhm.
want it to be that we have as many writers as possible, that we where we can we get disabled photographers, which we did with Shona and there was a disabled photographer who works for the Mirror, whose name I can't remember. And I edited most of the things, but there was also a sub editor who was disabled as well.
Okay.
So I wanted to just make sure at every level, because that's what you need. You need it at every level. You can't just
Yeah.
have disabled journalists coming in. You need disabled editors. You need disabled photographers, and that's how we make it. And I would never want it to be, I'm here, so I'm done now. Because there is people in the industry, and there's disabled people in the industry, unfortunately, who do go, oh, I've done it. It doesn't matter. If I can do it, why can't you do it?
Hmm.
And they don't look at all of the privilege that they hold to be able to get to that position.
Hmm.
Like we should be aspiration. We shouldn't be super inspo horny, but we should be aspirational. But at the
Yeah.
same time, we should be giving if we have, and I don't want to say lucky because obviously we've worked hard, but if we have been immensely lucky and privileged to get to these positions, such as, editing for the Daily Mirror, writing for the Daily Mirror regularly, we
Hmm.
should be wanting other people to have these opportunities as well.
Yeah,
I I
exactly.
I don't like I really dislike the way that some papers they hire one or two disabled or black or LGBTQ staff writers, and then they assign them all the stories. And that's okay because they've got a disabled writer covering it, they've got an
Yeah.
LGBTQ writer covering it. That shouldn't be the case at all. It should be that, yeah, these people do cover those stories, but they can also cover other stories, and
Mm.
also because it's not a monolith, like disability is not a monolith, being black's not a monolith, being LGBTQ, that they should be reaching out and other right and only, and if they're not the expert, even if they are disabled, LGBTQ, you know, black, everything else, even if they are that, acknowledging that other people could also write better stories and could cover it in a better angle, because
Yeah.
quite often I'm asked to do things now and it'll be, well, I know fuck all about that. That's got nothing to do with me, because it'll be things like stories about being in a wheelchair. I don't use a wheelchair. Stories about specific illnesses, like I was asked to cover the ME accuracy stuff. I don't have ME, but there are some great writers who do have ME,
Mm.
like Holly Ann Briggs, Laura Elliott, people like that, and they should have been the ones covering it, and they were, thankfully, they were the ones covering it. But when I was asked to do these things, it was like, I genuinely don't even know how I could accurately cover it. But at the
Hmm.
same time, there was disabled writers for outlets who were, because they were staff writers and they were assigned it, who did cover it, and that's fine. But it's about acknowledging that you're not always the expert, and you should be giving other disabled people these opportunities as well.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. And I kind of feel like that as well. Like I feel like within
mhm,
like the stuff that I do in terms of like design and drawing and stuff, I've had people
mhm,
reach out to me and I've been like, no, 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 you want to contact this illustrator.
mhm,
Like
mhm.
I when you know you're not the right person for,
I feel like not enough people do that, to be
yeah.
honest with
I'm
you.
like, here's a list of people. Go
There's a lot of people, especially within the creator space and especially within media and even in the disabled spaces, who will take
Mm,
every single opportunity. And that's fine because that's, they're building their own platform and stuff, but it's not always the opportunities. Uh, like, in my opinion, they're not always the best people who could be taking these opportunities and
yeah.
doing it to the extent. It's more because they're the popular person or because they're the big names. And it's like, why aren't you like, I hate to say it, but why aren't you looking within your community and looking to raise up your community at the same time?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important as well because, like
Hmm.
you say, you don't want to hold all the cards. Like you want
I
to
don't
help other people rise
Not more
up.
than anything, I haven't got the time. I haven't got the
Well,
energy,
yeah, exactly.
and I don't want, like, I like the career that I've afforded myself, that I take the opportunities that I really love doing, because I did used to
Yeah.
do as much as I could when I needed to, for the money and both for the peace of mind and to build my career.
Hmm.
But now I've gotten to quite a, obviously I'm not rich, but I'm at a quite happy stage where I can go, actually, I've done quite a bit this week, or I've done enough this week, or I've done as much as I want to do this week, that I'm not going to cover that. But here's some people who can cover it. Like, it's very rarely now, unless it's a huge story that I have huge opinions about, that I'll take things that come through that day.
Hmm.
Like, unless it's a huge news story, like the the minister for disabled people and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like I took two stories to do with that on the day, and then the
Wow.
story kept changing whilst I was writing it. But it's things like that, things like realizing just how much I don't need that stress, and
Mm.
there are people who can do it. I don't want to say better than me, but do it more justice when I'm so bloody exhausted and so frazzled that I
Yeah.
just want to go and sleep, and
Yeah.
cr and especially through the pandemic, because I was one of the few voices that was getting through, that, like, I don't want to be having to go and lie on a sofa and cry for an hour every time I finish doing my job.
Yeah.
I don't want to be having to stop in the middle of the day because I'm violently sobbing about a news story, Like, I want to be able to cover the stories whilst it doesn't hugely damage my mental health.
Mhm. And I feel like what you said at the start, like you're worried that you're coming across as like, picking and choosing what you do and don't cover. But actually, that's so important for your overall health
Mhm.
and
I mean,
your
honestly,
career.
I did so much during the pandemic, like, because I was during the 2021 spike, like, the one in the December, I was working for Very Well Health, an American website, but
Okay.
I was essentially the British disabled correspondent.
Right.
I was one of the few. I think I was the only British expert at the time, British reporter at the time at Very Well Health who was specifically disabled and writing about COVID on a
Mhm.
regular basis. So I was the one who was sort of reporting what was happening in the UK, which was 2 weeks ahead of America, and it has always been 2 weeks
Right.
ahead of America in terms of what was happening with the pandemic.
Mhm.
And it was literally getting to the point where I would have to update, like, I'd file a story, and then the daily figures would come out, and I just filed a story saying, like, the highest death rate of the whole of the pandemic, and the next lot of daily figures, and it was the next highest rate and stuff like that, and it would come to like 5 to 6 at night, and I'd be sobbing my heart out whilst having to edit an article, and it's just like, nah, can't do it anymore, man, can't do it. It
Yeah.
shouldn't be just me that's doing it. And that was when I was like, it doesn't have to be just me doing it either. Like,
Mhm.
it's great that I'm getting these opportunities, but you should be giving them to other people. And it was, trying to get that through to editors, going,
Mhm.
here's some other people, and it's like, oh no, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. And that was a huge part of why I started the Unwritten, because so many disabled writers who weren't at the same point in their career as me were struggling. Like, I was struggling enough to get my stories out there, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, how shit must it be for people who aren't at who haven't been doing this for 5 years, be trying be how shit must it be for them, like. And
Mhm.
it was hard, especially when outlets, because even in 2000, and they still do it a lot now, but in 2021 it was very much a trauma driven narrative, especially of op-eds and stuff like that. There was so much trauma coming out
Yeah.
from disability angles, and thankfully, like, I have noticed there's a lot less trauma angles now. And
Mhm.
I do like to think that is in part down to me, and just how much I drilled away at these bloody editors, to, like, about how shit the trauma porn was.
Mm.
But, I just realized how much disabled, like, it wasn't so much realizing, it was just being absolutely sick of constantly seeing those, like, that was the only things I was seeing, the trauma or the inspiration, and just wanting disabled people to be able to tell their own stories, and
Mhm.
being like, this is actually how it happened. I was ranting and ranting like I always did at my best friend, being like, I wish there was a space. I wish editors would let disabled people do this. And my best friend was just like, okay, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you set up your publication? Why? I think she said it. No, why don't you do it? Why don't you set up your own publication and do it then? It was half jokey as well, but I was just like, I can't do that, can I? I can't do that, can I? And I was like, oh, I might do that. And people who know me enough know that when I say I'm thinking of doing this, I'm definitely going to do it. So
Okay.
I sent out the tentative email and the tentative tweet of, if hypothetically I set this up, who would be interested? And I got hundreds of responses. And I was like,
Oh.
oh shit, looks like I'm doing this. Looks like I'm doing this.
I have committed.
Looks like I'm doing this because I've said I'm thinking of doing it, and people
Yeah.
know that means I'm definitely doing it. And yeah, it was just like but again, it's one of those things where the Unwritten was fantastic and it was great, but it was something that wasn't sponsored. It was something that wasn't profitable.
Yeah.
So publishers weren't really interested in it, and because I was trying to build my own career so much, I couldn't keep committing to doing a job that I wasn't paid for,
Mhm.
and I couldn't keep devoting so much time to this thing. So it might come back in the future. I still haven't really worked it out. I'd love it to come back in the future when I'm in a place where I can make it marketable and make it paid and stuff like that and have a full team of staff.
Mhm.
I feel like we did what we set out to do, we set out to just really open people's eyes to the importance of disabled stories. And it's still so hard to get disabled stories published, but it's less so the case now. And it's
Mhm.
fantastic seeing like editors talking, basically parroting my words that I was telling them 2, 3 years ago.
You're like, yes, they've taken
Lovely,
it on board.
I'm like, yes, you get it.
Amazing.
Disabled stories by disabled people.
But the fact that you had to quite literally engineer that platform
Yeah, I had
and
to do it myself. I had to do it
yeah.
myself, and I don't get any credit for it.
Mm.
Editors of massive tabloids will never say, "Oh yeah, we we changed the way our language is." Not just tabloids, but huge publications won't ever publicly go, "Oh, we finally realised that we need to treat disabled writers with a bit more dignity because Rachel told us to."
Mhm.
But they're never gonna acknowledge the ways in which I have slowly and subtly changed, even though IPSO are still not letting me create media guidelines, and they still think we don't need guidelines on how disability should be reported in the media.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see that there are those subtle changes. I mean, that the media is always going to be driven by clicks, and it's always going to be driven by sensationalism. But
Yeah.
slowly, we're making a change. There's always going to be it's always going to be geared towards the non-disabled audience.
Mhm.
But I do think that slowly we are making a change, and that's fantastic to see.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I definitely feel like
Hmm.
even just kind of online news, especially that feels
Hmm.
quite clickbaity sometimes,
Hmm.
I can see myself represented just that little bit more every
Just that
so
little bit
often.
more, can't you?
Yeah.
Like it's especially I think in the last 2, 3 years, it's
Yeah.
just coming through. I'm seeing the stories being written by disabled people that I wouldn't have seen written by disabled people a few years ago. I'm seeing editors specifically reach out
Mhm.
for disabled writers because they're realizing that the stories should be written by disabled writers.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
fantastic to see. It's so fantastic to see. And I'm really loath to say that's because of me, but a lot of the time I do think, yeah, that is quite probably because of me.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I
made
bet.
such a fuss about it.
And I was going to ask you, like, how did you sort of, was it kind of, did you know that you wanted to write a book? I know you said you were approached to write a book, but was this kind of while you were on hiatus kind of thing? Or like
No,
when did this
no.
start?
So I was at, so I was approached to write. So I already had the idea of writing a different book, and that's eventually going. That's way down the line now. So I wanted
Oh,
to write a book on the gender pain gap, which I'm going to do eventually.
okay.
But we've got other plans, and I'm not allowed to talk about the other plans because my agent would
Oh, you've
come
got
here and
loads in the works.
just appear and murder me. To be honest with you, she wouldn't, but she does have this fantastic habit of whenever I start talking about the secret plans that I'm not supposed to, I'll get a text message or I'll get. So we were. It's
She's
a
on
really
to
funny
you.
story. It's a really funny story. I'm sorry, this is a tangent, but I was asked by Louis, who did my online launch for Ruby, what's next, and Cara was Cara was in the meeting, and she literally like everybody had their cameras off because it was an event, and she literally just turned her camera on and looked at me. I was like, "Oh my god, turn the camera on!"
You're like, okay.
Okay, I'm not going to talk about it. No, so I originally went to Caro, my agent, with a idea for a non-fiction, which is going to be in the works in a few years now because we've got other stuff happening. But it's about the gender pay gap and medical misogyny,
Okay.
and we and then around the same time as that, I got approached by HarperCollins, and they 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 do this because it's an educational imprint. Big Cat's Books Like Me.
Oh, okay.
They specifically want it to be written by the people that the series are about. So they do different series, and they do ones again to do with LGBTQ people. They do stories specifically that have black characters, different ethnic minority characters and stuff like that. And
Okay.
they do physically disabled. They do different sections, and they do fiction and non-fiction, and it's it's that thing of, when you're at school and you do guided reading or
Yes. Yeah.
comprehension, what it was known as when I was at school. That's what Ruby is essentially, because she's got like questions at the back, and
Ah.
you've got to link it all together and stuff.
Mhm.
So they asked me if I had ever considered writing a book. And I was like, yeah, I would fucking love to write a book. Don't know about a kids book. Don't know what I'm gonna write a kids book about. And then they said physical disabilities, and it was as I was thinking more and more about dyspraxia, because I was seeing so much to do with neurodivergent stuff online. I was like, I literally can't remember ever really reading uh much kid stories that involved dyspraxia. I know Elle McNichol, one of her stories, has got a dyspraxic main character.
That's the only one
Uh,
I can think of.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally, I think that's like a charm and like a curse.
Yeah.
Her character Rhea is dyspraxic.
Mhm.
Literally, that's all I can think of that have got dyspraxic characters, really. Um, so I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then the story came along that, like, oh, because I wanted to be a journalist when I was little, but I was told that I couldn't be a journalist when I was little because I literally decided not to pursue journalism at university because I didn't think that I could write very well, and I didn't think I would do very good at telling stories and stuff, which is ridiculous because all I do is tell stories.
Yeah. That's
um,
mad.
so, but then I wanted to tell a story that was not just about a kid, but also hark back to that adult who is quite comfortable in who she is as a disabled person and does things differently,
Mhm.
and is also a journalist. And my friends all call me Susie because really, essentially, I am Susie Starling. For all I don't want to admit, I'm Susie. Um, yeah, but no. So they asked me if I wanted to do that. I said, yeah, I would love to. I'm in the middle of sorting things out with my agent, and my agent got involved just so that we could keep the money stuff separate because, as part of dyspraxia, money isn't real.
Yeah.
I can't really do maths or money.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, please sort that out. It took a while to sort all the contracts and stuff. We signed the contracts in April, literally the exact same day that we signed the contracts, my marriage broke down. So that
Oh,
was great.
bless you.
Yeah, my marriage
Oh,
broke down on the night of me signing the contract. So I
my
had to
God.
move back to my childhood home where I'd experienced all of growing up as a dyspraxic child and not being understood as a dyspraxic. Not being in a world that wasn't built for me. I mean, my
Yeah.
parents were great, but it was very much a world that wasn't built for me. So the turnaround of these books is very quick because they're literally only 50 odd pages. So
Right.
I signed the contract in April. The book was due in June,
Wow.
middle of June, end of
Okay.
July, middle of June, July-ish. So I literally spent pretty much every day in my childhood bedroom writing a story about my childhood, and that
Oh,
was just so weirdly healing, but
okay.
also being able to unmask and having that space where I'm trying to figure out who I am as a person
Mhm.
whilst unmasking, whilst dealing with all of the childhood things that I buried down for so long. Yeah, it was fun. It was a trip. It was a massive
I
trip, to be
bet.
honest. And then we got the editors and we got the illustrators involved and everything. And a really big thing that I was really keen on doing was the audiobook version, because again, like, people who, like, you don't have just like kids in stories and kids in books and kids in adaptations don't sound like me.
Mhm.
Like, they don't, like, so I really wanted her to be non-explicitly northern as well.
Mhm.
Like, there's little hints that are being northern just in the language and stuff like that, but I wanted her to sound like me.
Yeah.
So I did the audiobook. That was the final piece of the puzzle, doing the audiobook, because it took so, like, getting the edits and the illustration and stuff, and then we
Yeah.
did the audiobook literally. God, when was it? The audiobook was the big, very the I think it was the 1st or 2nd of December, the very beginning of
Oh,
December.
okay.
Then she went that, and that was the same week Ruby went to print. So she went to print. We did the audiobook, and then she came out on the 8th of on the 8th of January, and she was completely done. And it was literally just like a couple of days before Christmas I got to hold her in my hand.
Oh,
And it was, yeah, it's been a very untraditional publishing like through the
yeah.
whole thing of publishing, but it's been incredible. Like I feel like I've been completely thrown into the fire because with it being an educational imprint, it's not something that goes, you have educational and then you have trade, and trade is the mass marketed stuff, the stuff that goes into actual bookshops and is publicized and all that, you know.
Mhm.
So I had to do all of the publicity myself because these books really are, they're made just for schools, but I knew how important this was going to be to a lot of adults and a lot of
Yeah.
people who wanted this book for their kid, which is not really what Big Cat are used to. That's not really what they do. They do mostly for schools. So I had to do all the marketing, I had to do all of the, you know, all of this stuff. Like
Mm.
none of it's been organized by my publisher or anything like that. Um, and it's been a lot, but con- considering like I've had no marketing budget or anything, that she got to the top of an Amazon bestsellers list, well, several Amazon bestsellers lists, was absolutely incredible.
I
I was
saw
like,
that.
how has this happened? She she was in the top 20 of overall new kids books at one point.
Which is mad.
Absolutely unreal. Yeah, absolutely unreal. She was the bestseller of physically disabled fiction, no, physically disabled kids books,
Hmm.
non-fiction books with disabilities, which it wasn't a non-fiction, fiction
Amazing.
kids books with disabilities, new kids books. She was just, yeah, she was top of all of these charts, and I was like, we've had no promotion. It's literally just me being a dick on Twitter and Instagram. How has this happened? Like, it sold out, and the publishers weren't prepared for it to sell out because these books don't really sell out on Amazon and stuff like that. They
Amazing.
were preparing to do it. They were preparing to do another restock like a month later, and I was like, people who have ordered the book don't have the book. You like we ended up doing a restock the next day when usually it takes like a month for these books to sell out when they first go
Oh.
when they're first published, because
Mm.
they're not even like, they don't even follow the traditional publishing schedule, you know, because publish books are always published on a Thursday, whereas because it was an educational imprint, it was published on a Monday. So
Right. Okay.
it was like it was competing with books that had already been out a week, a
Right.
few days by that point, and she was
My
still getting
God.
to the top of all of these charts. I didn't understand. I mean, I was higher than people like Adam Hills, Rosie Jones. I was higher than Christine McGuinness, and I was just sat there like, how? I've got I've got no budget at all. It's literally me being a dick on Twitter and my agent making posters on Canva.
Amazing. But it doesn't that just show that it's,
The
you know,
power of the
people are
community.
in, yeah, but also people are invested in you and what you have
Yeah,
to say.
I feel
And
like it really showed how much people needed this book, because a lot of
yeah.
adults told me how much they needed this book, but also a lot of my friends that have got kids were telling me how much they needed this book. So
Hmm.
two of my really close friends have got kids who are 10 and 12, and they were sending me pictures of them with the books. One of them wrote me a little review. Ugh, and
Oh.
it was just absolutely lush, you know, like to see both, because one of them is neurodivergent, one of them isn't. Both to see neurodivergent and neurotypical kids just absolutely loving this book, and
Oh.
it was really, really incredible, but really, really bizarre that I was getting the sort of publicity that I just never expected to get.
I think that's amazing though.
I
And
think it's
like,
lovely. It's absolutely
yeah.
lovely because I always go back to it. You know, it was literally just from me being a dick on Twitter. Like it was, there was no posters. It wasn't sent out in advance. It didn't get like proofreaders or advanced readers. It didn't get blurbed by famous people.
Yeah.
Most people because of because of this. the stuff that went on with the publishing, and it's selling out. Most people didn't even get it for the first few days, and it was still an Amazon bestseller when people couldn't physically receive it.
I'm
People were
just
still buying it.
imagining just the publishers being like, "What?"
They
Like
genuinely didn't. I get the massive sense that they didn't have a clue what to do. But bearing in mind, I'd been telling them, because I'd been telling them for like I'd been told to manage my expectations for a year, but at the same time I was like, yeah, but I'm really sorry, but this is not just me blowing my own trumpet. This is gonna sell in markets you weren't expecting it to sell.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
it's
like,
your
oh, you
baby
know,
as well,
that's
like,
not
it's
what we do,
your
that's not what we do, and that's
yeah,
fine because that isn't what they do, but it's what I do, you know?
yeah,
Like I've always I don't necessarily market myself, and that's what I think people like about me, because
mhm,
I'm unfiltered. I'm not super polished, obviously. I'm in a pizza hoodie right now. Uh, I'm not I'm not putting an image on online. I'm literally, I can go from tweeting about politics and bullying the government to talking about my favorite TV show in the whole wide world, Ghosts.
I can talk about ghosts forever, love ghosts.
I can't believe it's taken. How long have we been talking? I can't believe it's taken an hour to mention Ghosts. Ghosts is one of those beautiful shows because they don't try and make it like into a niche, They don't try and make it like this is for this sort of people. This is
Yeah,
really edgy. This is for singles. This is for this. They
yeah,
genuinely want a show that everybody can watch, and that
mhm,
shows. Like it's just I fucking love it. I could talk about it for the rest of my life. I really could, and I really hope that I do get to do that.
yeah. Also, exactly like you say, like, I feel like, it's, there's the humor level of horrible histories level,
Mm.
all the
Mm-hmm.
way up to, like, hilarious adult humor that's very
Mm-hmm.
subtle.
Just
And the
goes
fact,
over their heads completely.
yeah,
Like
the fact you can
it's
watch it
nothing.
with little
Like
ones.
it's nothing, darling. Sort of humor. Oh, it's
Yeah,
nothing. It's fine. That
yeah,
sort of thing. Like the things like all the funny jokes. Kids wouldn't get the funny jokes,
no,
but we find it absolutely fucking hilarious.
yeah. And just some of the, like, Alison and Mike, like, kind of
Ah,
their relationship and how they speak to each other, I feel
there's,
like,
mo- there's that one of my favorite lines ever in the whole show is, and it's such a throwaway moment, but I can't even remember what episode it is actually. And it's I think it's the episode where they've got all the actors in, and Mike just go and she's like, oh, it doesn't matter, sort of thing, and he goes, are you mad? And she goes, context. I bloody love that line.
it's the
God.
short, sharp, like, responses, isn't it, that get you?
Just
It's like, ah,
so real. It's so real, and this is this is one of the things that Ben told me, and I think the first time I interviewed him, like the reason it's so real is that they base it so much in real life. They don't want it to be a caricature,
mhm,
and then the jokes go on top, because you want it to be about real issues that people face. You don't want it, even though it's based in like, dead people, you want it to be real. You
yeah,
want people to relate to it. And there's so much it's really weird. There's such a crossover of neurodivergent and queer fans. Like a huge section of the fan base is neurodivergent because they just feel safe with it. It's such a safe show, and some of the characters are quite neurodivergent coded, but it's just more than
yeah,
anything, it's such an inclusive and really just there for everybody's show. Like it feels like, because it's such a found family thing, that it feels like that, and the fandom feels very much like that, and everybody is just really inclusive, and I've never known a show like that has such a huge neurodivergent fan base in that sort of way.
mhm.
It's fantastic. It really is.
And the way they, like, they tackle some big subjects, like the way they tackle, like, death, like, of
Hmm.
one of the ghosts. I don't want to
Hmm.
spoil it, but they do it very
No, but
light-hearted,
I mean,
but
I mean, I mean, I mean, but can we though? Because that episode, we're thinking of the same episode, right?
yeah,
We're thinking of Carpe Diem.
yeah.
My
Oh
word,
my god.
my words when I interviewed Ben were, first of all, how dare you?
How dare you do this
How
to us?
dare you? And he just laughed at us, to be honest. But no, yeah, no, like genuinely, like It is. It's heartbreaking stuff,
Yeah.
terrible heartbreaking stuff. But then there's so much ridiculous humor on top of it.
Yeah.
And it's just making the fact that, like, real life is really funny. Things
Mm.
like falling into a window and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
Because he's got that terrible thing where he's having to sneak in to meet to try and find the love of his life, and he falls through a window.
I do remember that. So it's just
Great.
so clever. And I just, yeah, I'm big fan,
It's
big
just such a
fan.
clever show because it doesn't try to be clever.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
exactly. It's so clever without trying.
Mhm.
And
It's not trying to be like oh, you've got to be a certain level, you've got to be super dedicated, you've got to know all of this other stuff to be able to enjoy the show. And it's
and
like,
I
no.
feel like you could watch them in any order, really. Like it doesn't really require, like,
Mhm.
obviously it's better to watch it in order, but I feel
Please
like
go
you could,
watch in order multiple times.
yeah, if you can rewatch your favorite ones and stuff, like,
But it's such a big comfort show as well. Like, it was one of at the
yeah.
time. So at the beginning of 2022, it was the figures had just come out from all the lockdowns and stuff, and it was one of the most popular shows
Hmm.
of of pandemic viewing, of lockdown viewing. I think at one point on the BBC iPlayer website, it was the most popular show, and that it wasn't even when there was a series; it was just from everybody catching up.
Yeah,
So
I think that's lovely.
series two came out, I think, in like the October of 2020, like around, I don't know, around that time, I
Yeah.
think. Um, and it was when everybody else discovered it as well. And it just caught, like, everybody was like, shit, this is such a lovely show to just sit and watch.
Hmm.
Like, spend all our time doing. Because I know, so I think, I'm not sure if I watched series one when it came out, but I definitely got mad into series two. And I
Hmm.
will always love series two, because bloody, I've forgotten the name of the episode. Reading Weddy. Reading Weddy is one of the best episodes of TV ever
Yeah.
to have existed.
It's just on so many levels. It was so funny and so
Sure, yeah.
just comical. How they did that wedding.
I can see why they ended it, but at the same time, I
Yeah.
I'm not mad about them ending
Oh,
it.
absolutely. However, I do feel like we might need to go visit Button House sometime
Oh
because
yeah, but
I,
you can go
yeah.
on tours. They do tours.
Have you Googled it too?
They do, like, they do filming tours. Well, I follow. I think West Horsey Place follows me as well, but I follow West Horsey Place, and they do filming tours. But the filming tours are sold out until about the summer. They're
Absolute
already sold
fandom.
out, and then
Wow.
every single weekend, and they're already sold out until like May
Oh.
time.
Well, I'm
It's
happy
fun.
for them, like the actual, location,
Oh,
like getting people in.
it's done so much for West Horsey Place because it means they've actually been able to, because it was a pretty rundown house, so they
Mm.
have been able to renovate at the speed, like at a better speed than what they expected because of
Hmm.
this fantastic thing. And I feel like we should
Yeah.
probably start talking about myself again and not just ghosts.
Yeah, I know. It's so good.
I want to talk about ghosts for the rest of my life.
You just hit me up whenever you want to chat. I love your little your pillow with all the doggies.
Oh, this is my bedding. I bought this the other day. It's the Stacey
Oh,
Solomon range.
oh,
The Stacey Solomon range from Argos. Stacey Solomon. So it's got
oh,
little dachshunds, and I think it's also got it's got little spaniels as well, because
oh,
that's her
that's
range.
so
It's dachshunds and
cute.
spaniels. So this is my new bed, and it's fleece lined as well, so it's so soft and
Oh,
warm.
see, and
And I
you.
got a little. Have I got the mug as well? I got a little mug as well. This
Oh, I
is
have so many
great.
Dachshund mugs. It's ridiculous.
Got so many. It's my dirty dachshund mug because it's
Oh,
got half a coffee in it. Yeah. So have you got a dachshund, or do you just love dachshunds?
I just love Dachshunds. So basically, since I was 18, I've wanted one, but I
Mm,
just look after like people's Dachshunds for them.
that
Um,
is fair enough. To be fair, they are so needy. He is such a needy boy.
oh,
I've had mine since he was like, I think he was 2 months, like 9 weeks old when we got him.
oh,
And
okay.
like, cause I'm his mummy, he is just the neediest little boy in the whole wide world. And he's not been well recently with him having, he's had back
Yeah.
problems and stuff. He's all right now. He's had painkillers. He's all right. And he's just been stuck to us when he's not been well. Like,
Oh.
because he sleeps in my bed with me. So if he was here, he would be stuck. He would be like up this whole side of us because he's a standard, so he's a full size one. and he's
Okay.
literally so big compared to what people think of when they think of dachshunds.
How do you
But
not roll over onto him? Or do you?
I know I've got to be like, well, he's quite solid to be fair, so you can always
Yeah.
feel him, and you
Oh,
can't really move to be honest with you. Like I get pushed into one side of the bed so much when he sleeps next to it. It's unreal.
oh,
But yeah,
that's
we so I share custody of him with my soon to be ex-husband.
right, I see.
And really weird not having him here for 3 days, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, it must be weird to you're so used to him being stuck to you, and then
Mhm.
him being away is like a
Lovely. It's lovely not having it, especially when he's been ill. Because like when he was ill, it was just easier because I'm the one that works from home. It was just easier for me to keep him. So
yeah.
I cared for him by myself, and I left the house, I think twice to do the shopping in a week and a half without him. And when
Oh,
you've got such a needy animal who is essentially your baby,
yeah.
I was done in. I was
Mm.
absolutely done.
And that's it also like terrifies me, like how
Mm,
like their backs can be
mm,
such a big
mhm.
problem and how
Yeah,
careful you
so
have to be with them.
we were really lucky that we caught it really early, because literally if you don't treat the back problems early, that's when it'll lead to the surgery.
Okay.
We were lucky that we caught it literally within like a week of him starting to wince and stuff.
Okay.
And she said the vet said like at this early stage you just do painkillers and it should just go down.
Mhm.
Um, and it seemingly has because he's been on the strong painkillers. He was on like gabapentin, the epilepsy medication.
Oh my word.
Really, 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 really strong medication. Like I was on it and I was like a zombie. I couldn't move when I was on it before my endometriosis operation. And yeah,
Jeez.
he's just been zonked out, to be honest with you. He's been absolutely out of off his face, yeah.
Oh, bless him. It must be so confusing to be a dog on meds and be
Yeah,
like,
dog
what is
on
happening?
drugs. Well,
Yeah.
the thing is as well, because he did like because I used to put them in his food, but they made his food taste weird. So I was giving him chicken nuggets laced with drugs. So he was just eating his favorite food in the world, chicken nugget, and then getting absolutely off his face.
Oh, bless him. Do you think he'll trust a chicken nugget again?
Oh yeah, you know, I mean, they're his favorite food. He's never gonna not trust a chicken nugget, to be honest with
No.
you. But we started to put like he's so good because he knows that he only gets chicken nuggets if he's a good boy. So we if he starts whinging like while I'm cooking the chicken nuggets, I'm like, only good boys get chicken nuggets.
He knows to
Only good
like,
only good boys get chicken nuggets. And he goes and lies down. He goes to his
oh.
bed. And, like I'm often like because I do body doubling with my friends,
Mhm.
like who also have like dyspraxia, ADHD and stuff. And I'll often be like, only good boys get chicken nuggets, and they're like, okay, we're gonna be good, we're gonna be good.
Like that, you get like a reaction from
Yeah,
them as well. That's so cute.
everybody's like chicken nuggets. I will,
um,
don't you?
I guess we should probably discuss where people could buy your book. Like,
Yeah,
I know you've
you
mentioned
can buy it
Amazon.
on. I think we should probably discuss what my book's about, really, because we haven't really done
Yeah, we kind of touched on it at the start and then we went
that.
off on a tangent.
So, Ruby Hastings writes her own story. Is
hmm Yeah, that's the title, everybody.
it's about. I said this. So when me and Ella did my really chaotic live, they asked me what my book was about, and I went, "It's about Ruby Hastings, and she writes her own story."
That's it in a nutshell. We're all good.
That's it. No, Ruby Hastings writes her own story. It's about a dyspraxic 11-year-old girl.
Mhm.
She is very headstrong and she knows what she wants to do. She wants to be a journalist when she grows up, but because of ableism from teachers, ableism from other kids, she is pushed out of her dream and she thinks she can't achieve her dream. So she starts a campaign to she decides to no yes, no. She decides to start a campaign to bring a paper for disabled kids. She is really headstrong about that because she's told nobody wants to read your crap stories about disabled kids, and she's like, well, everybody deserves to be in the paper.
Mhm.
Um and she campaigns to be allowed to be in the paper, and she's recognised by her idol, who is Susie Starlin, who writes for what did we call it? We called it the Daily Echo, uh,
Okay.
which is a
Amazing.
conjuncture of the Daily Mirror and my local paper, the Echo. Uh,
Amazing.
and Yeah, she writes for that, and she's a disability rights journalist, and she's a columnist, and she's completely fictional. Don't know where I got the idea from. I mean, she's ginger. She's completely fictional. She works from home. She's disabled. Um, yeah, no. Um, and Ruby really wants to be her when she grows up. And when she meets Susie, she finds out that Susie is also dyspraxic. So
Mhm.
that really blows Ruby's mind. And Susie shows Ruby all of the ways that she can succeed if she's given the accommodations to succeed. And Ruby reminds Susie why she fights. And it's really the story of everybody deserves to see themselves in stories, but
Mm.
also that disabled people can succeed when they are given the right tools to succeed.
Mhm.
And just because you do things differently doesn't make them wrong.
I mean, you've packed in a lot into.
Yeah, do you know what? I've gotten really good at summarizing it.
Yeah, but also you've packed a
Even
lot
though
into the book.
yeah, yeah, I packed a lot of lessons into this
Yeah.
45. I think it's 45 pages,
Okay.
54 with it being spread out and the illustrations
Mhm.
and the questions and stuff and the guided stuff after. But yeah, 54-page book. I've packed a lot into it. And do you know
Yeah.
what? I wrote double what went in that book.
Did
we
you?
we cut down a lot. We cut down a lot. It could be a full length couple of 100-page kids book. It really could. And like, who knows? Maybe one day it might. It
Ah,
could be. Maybe one day it could be, but that's not a thing that I can control, and that's not a thing
yeah.
that I don't know if I've got time for. Never mind anything else.
I mean, at least you had too many words and not too little. Like you had
Yeah,
so much to
no.
choose from.
That's it, like condensing it all down into 4,000 words. And there was some really great things that got cut as well.
Mhm.
Like we had things like we had more about her because she's got a best friend who is disabled, and what I love about her best friend who is disabled is that her disability is the least interesting thing about her. I always
Okay.
say this, like she uses different mobility aids, and it's not explicitly stated what her disability is because that's not relevant. Like
Okay.
she uses different disability aids. She uses different mobility aids
Mhm.
depending on how her body feels that day,
Mhm.
and that's a really important thing to me as well. To include disabled people in my stories, but not make it about this is why they're disabled. This is how hard it's been for them. Like
Mhm.
quite often when I'm writing about a disabled person, if it's a news story, I won't even include what their disability is because why do you need to know that?
Mhm.
It's very personal information. Why do you, who is just reading a news story about somebody, need to know this really personal information? So I like, and it's little things like we want to include more about Tam's disability, but also more about like because there is a found family aspect of it. Like it is very much her family,
Mhm.
but like she doesn't have a mum. She has an auntie. She doesn't like she has a big sister who also is quite a mum figure to her. She has a best friend and her best friend's brother who comes home with her quite a lot. So we wanted to explore that dynamic. There were like Tam's parents were going to be involved, but again, we just didn't have the space for it. There was going to be more about, so like her sister isn't explicitly stated as being neurodivergent, but there is the traits that you can pick up on. So we wanted to include more of that. And yeah, there was just going to be such a huge host of characters, and like there was going to be Susie backstory and everything that we just didn't have the space for.
This needs to be a series. Come on.
I mean, HarperCollins, you know where I am,
Yeah.
babes.
Tap me up.
I mean, no, but
um,
that's the beauty of it, like because there are these great characters who are kids.
mm,
There could be books
mm,
if we wanted to revisit it. There is scope to do stories about Tam, stories about Amelia, stories about the other disabled kids who feature in it, and then maybe one day there could be stories about Ella. There could be stories about Susie.
mhm,
Because there's these great rich characters that I wrote and that I wrote reams about, like to get inside their heads and to get the sense of who the characters were. Like I've got the big descriptions and the pieces of dialogue that we didn't manage to fit in, and I even what like the first thing I do when I'm writing characters is cast them in my mind. So I've got all of the celebrities that they look like, so I know who they are.
you know who's playing them.
I know who's playing them in the adaptations. Like
Amazing. You're prepared, if anything.
I'm prepared. No, our So for me, it was because I love I you know when the adaptation of My Life gets made, it's going to be Karen Gillan who's playing me. So Susie was played by Karen Gillan.
I see that. Right. I
and
see
then
that.
the and then the younger character Ruby was played by Caitlin, who played Amy, the younger Amy Pond in Doctor Who.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, yeah, because they're the same. Even though they're
Yeah.
not related, they're very much the
Yeah.
same. They're on the same sort of journey, and Susie is the older projection of who Ruby wants to be. And but the funniest one for me was that we cast me and one of my best friends, we cast because I was like, I need this man to be a man that people want, that are easily charmed by, but
Mhm.
there's just a weird ickiness about it that you can't quite explain. And for me, that's Tom Hiddleston.
I see.
There's just
Yeah.
something you
There's
can't explain
something.
that makes you go, "Oh, it's a bit, oh, I don't know how I feel about him." That
Yeah.
he's really hot and he's really charming, but at the same time, it's like, oh. So we tried to get him as close as we could to looking like Tom Hiddleston, which is great because my one of my other best friends, Dawn, is absolutely obsessed with him and she loves him.
How did she
So I was like,
find that? Was she a bit
Dawn,
like, oh.
Dawn, who does this look like? It's just like.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was
Also,
fantastic.
it must be. Have you thought about the fact that like children are going to be reading this as part of their, education, reading comprehension within school?
Like
Like that's pretty wild.
their curriculum, kids are going to be reading this book at school.
Yeah, that's
Like
mad.
it's absolutely unreal that kids are going to learn about my book at school. I
Hmm.
can't even fathom it. I really can't.
Just the fact that you're showing,
Hmm.
them using different like mobility aids, like
Hmm.
some of the characters, and showing like it's okay to have,
Hmm.
to use these aids as and when you need them. Like if you don't have them one day, it doesn't mean, your
Yeah,
friend's feeling
yeah.
better. Like that's
that was
huge.
that was really important to me that that Tam does have different mobility aids and that they were gorgeous mobility aids as well. Like they weren't just bog standard crap mobility aids. I wanted them because she's really interested in basketball. I wanted them all to be orange, and I wanted them to look really sleek and cool. So she's
Mhm.
got her wheelchair has got basketballs on the trims, and all of the metalwork is orange. So her walk is orange,
Oh,
her sticks are orange, her her wheelchair's orange, and I was like, yeah, because kids want these stuff to look amazing, and
yeah.
it's the same for like it's coming through for adults now as well, because disability. What I mean, a lot of people still are ashamed of disability, but for younger people like ourselves, we want things to look good because they're a big part of us, and it's not something
Yeah.
we're ashamed of. And like, if I want my shoes to look good, if I want my bag to look good, I want my walking stick to look good as well.
Hmm.
I want to be able to change my walking stick to fit my outfits. I want a walking stick, which is possible now. I want a walking stick that is glittery or glows up.
Yeah.
Like my favorite one that I've got is a blue light up one that looks like a lightsaber.
That's cool. I
Is
feel
it
like I
like,
follow them on Instagram, the people
yeah,
that make.
Neo?
That's
Yeah.
it. Yes.
Yeah, so I've got one of
Oh,
those, but I've also got a glittery one by them too, and I've got a different one by Cool Crutches that's like mermaid scales. I was like,
cool.
this is what we want. We want walking sticks that are gorgeous and that people,
Yeah.
because we're not ashamed of these things. We don't want them just hidden away.
Hmm.
We don't want them to look. We don't want them to look like things people are ashamed to talk about. And the amount, honestly, that's such a conversation piece. Like whenever I'm using my cane,
Yeah.
like people will be like, "Oh my God, I love your stick. Where did you get your stick from? That's incredible. I didn't know sticks could look like that."
Yeah, because I feel like people have this kind of image in their mind of kind of an elderly person's
Well, it's
walking
an
stick.
elderly person, and quite when I first started using my canes, and they were lovely, lovely canes and stuff. I would be asked if they were props, if I really needed it,
Mm.
or if it was a prop, and I'm like, no, this is just my cane.
Yeah.
It's just a little lush at the same time,
Hmm.
because I'm not elder. I still do get asked, like, oh, you can't really need that, do you, and stuff like that, because there is still the image of disabled people are only elderly, and
Hmm.
that's why it's so important to have so much media representation. Like it's so great that we are slowly but surely getting more younger disabled actors and more disabled TV personalities, you know?
Yeah.
It's so important that we keep getting that, and that we keep funding these sort of TV shows, and that we keep pushing them forward, but also disabled people from different backgrounds, you know, like
Yeah.
disabled people that sound like me, disabled people and northern, disabled people that are queer and different ethnicities and stuff like that, not just posh private school who look disabled one particular way, you know, like every disabled person in a wheelchair who's on TV, which, you know, many disabled people are in wheelchairs, but not every disabled person is in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
And not every disabled person is from London and can get to London. And that's why another thing that I really try and push whenever I'm asked to do appearances is that I can do them from home,
Hmm.
because it's great that we can do that now, but there's still this expectation that if you're going to do TV, you're going to do it in the studio. If you're
Hmm.
going to do radio, which doesn't need to be in the studio, you're going to do it from the studio. So whenever I'm asked to do these things, I'm like, yeah, I can do it, but if I can do it from my house, if I can do it in my dressing gown, I'm there.
Hmm. Also, I feel like so much during like the pandemic was like live streamed, or like it
Mm.
was like I feel like now it's going back to more like
Yeah, it's gone back.
hybrid or live, and I'm like, no, 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 live stream it, please.
Gone completely back because people
Yeah.
are so desperate to go back to that. You know, even though it was shit, people are so
Why?
desperate to go back to the old ways. Why would we want to go back to the old ways? They didn't work for anybody. And
Mm.
especially, it just means it's not even disabled talent, it's just the amount of different talent that you can get in by not insisting that they're in the studio.
Hmm.
Especially for things like developing news stories, you know, like news stories that come out literally that day, and
Mm.
you want somebody to talk about that news story that day, but you're still expecting them to be in the studio. Like I was
Yeah.
almost on Newsnight last year, but they contacted me on the afternoon, and they pulled out because they realized I couldn't do it in the studio. They were giving me 2 3 hours notice, and they wanted me to be in the studio. I was like, well, it takes 3 hours
But
to
you
get to London, so I'm
don't
not going
live
to be in
there.
the studio, am I? And it was, you know, they ended up with a great panel, but it wasn't a it wasn't an inclusive panel.
Hmm.
I don't want to disrespect the people who were on the panel because they were great people, but it wasn't as broad a panel as they would have had if they'd done it hybrid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really what needs to be done. And it is slowly coming in, you know, like it's coming in, especially with radio. Radio do great with this. And I've gotten some great opportunities from radio. Like more and more, I'm starting to do more radio, which I wouldn't, even though it's radio, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do 3 4 years ago. They just
Hmm.
wouldn't have thought to include people that they could do like through live stream.
Yeah. But
But
you just think like
it's just needing
audio. Come on.
it's just about that, you know, like not funneling in, because the media has a problem with that anyway. You know, they have a problem with especially like the media organizations, and how many of the journalists or the reporters or even like the crew and all of that stuff went to the big universities, you know,
Mm.
or are from certain parts of the UK, or are from certain socio-economic backgrounds. They have a huge problem with that, and it's not just disability.
Hmm.
So it's about giving everybody the opportunities. And if that also and if that also means that more disabled people get the opportunities, which it should, that's great. But it's
Yeah.
about opening the opportunities for everybody,
Hmm.
and not just the people who went to Oxford and Cambridge, or who are from London, or who
Hmm.
can get to a London studio with 2 hours notice.
I can't
You know?
believe that.
Yeah, like it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is. But it's the same with acting. It's the same with any sort of public facing job, that the majority of these things has to be in London, and then they're not providing people with the funding to get to London.
Well, there's an
Like,
assumption that you're already existing there. It's
yeah,
like, hang on.
it's like you need to, because I get invited to so many events with like a week, 2 weeks notice, the most at the most,
Mm.
and they're always in London. But then when I go, okay, covering expenses, they're like, oh no, we don't have the budget for that.
But also, the
I'm like,
trains are not that reliable.
yeah,
Like,
no, no, like
oh,
literally, I can have a train booked and I'll still not get to London the time I'm supposed to get to London.
mm.
Last time I went to London, the beginning of December, it was the day we had the really heavy snow at the beginning of December. And I was lucky that my train was only running half an hour late, you know?
Yeah, that was good.
I ended up leaving London early and if I hadn't have left London early, it would have taken me 8 hours to get home because I was watching the updates on the train that I had, the original train that I had booked, and it was pushed back
Oh.
so far back that instead of 3 hours, it would have taken me 8 hours to get home. But
Oh
I
my
got an
God.
earlier train, and it was before the really bad weather set in. So I got home, like, my train was delayed, but it was actually in the end, it got me home the time I was supposed to arrive home. So
Okay,
it was
that's
delayed by an hour as opposed to like 8 hours.
oh my God. Think of the places you could get to in 8 hours, like wow.
Honestly, like, but like, it's great. Like, we've got great transport links now. Like getting from Newcastle to London in 3 hours. I mean, I can get to London quicker than I can get to parts of the north because we've got that.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to London, you can get there. Like, there's all of the roads and all of the rails lead to London.
Mm.
But it's about realizing that there is talent outside of London.
Yeah, there really
Especially
is.
for people especially for people who have got energy limiting disabilities, or who have got disabilities that mean they can't travel easily. Because, travel isn't accessible. It's far from accessible travel.
Mhm.
And that's even as somebody who doesn't use a wheelchair, and as somebody who can change their plans quite quickly because they don't have to book assistance and stuff like that. Travel is still not accessible to me. It's crap. I
Mhm.
hate travel, but I'll do it for work. But it's about realizing that we shouldn't have to do that constantly. We should be able to, like I'm doing now. We should be able to do these opportunities. And I've done so much from my bed. I've done so much work from my bed that a few years ago would have been really frowned upon.
But why does it matter where you are?
Yeah, and it's still
Literally.
there's still that notion, like
Yeah, it really is.
you get people like especially Alan Sugar talking about how lazy it is to work from your bed. I don't know why I thought of Alan Sugar, but he was definitely one of the ones who was talking very loudly about it. About how lazy it is to work in your bed. It's like, no, it's not lazy. It
Yeah.
means that I've got the energy. It's actually the opposite. If I'm
Mhm.
working from bed, it's saving my energy.
Yeah. I remember being told, like, when we, like, an old job when we came back from the pandemic, they wanted us in 5 days a week again, despite
Mm,
having worked from home for, like,
mhm,
I don't know, however many months. And
mhm,
they were like, it's about seeing bums on seats. Like, it's about
mhm.
seeing people in the office working. I was like, I was doing, what did you think I was
Yeah.
doing for all those months?
It's about
Like,
realizing how much more the job market opened up to
yeah.
disabled people during COVID, though. Like, because I wrote a lot about working from home
Mhm.
when the world started opening up again. I was writing a lot about working from home and how accessible it was to disabled people, and the stories I was getting from people. People who were able to work from bed, who were able to work and not worry about like working with the camera off, because a lot of the time they couldn't regulate the temperature, and it meant they could work in like very little clothing, or
Mhm.
they could still do their work whilst, if they had conditions that meant they spent a lot of time in the toilet, or if it
Yeah.
or if it or like or they could work from their bed, or they could work from different parts of their house and not be judged for it,
Mhm.
just in different positions, lying down on the front, and just working in a way that worked for them as
Mhm.
opposed to work for a big corporation.
Yeah.
That's what they need to realize more than anything, that they that they need to do things in the interests of the employees.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
oh, this has been so lovely.
Oh no, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been super lovely to chat to you, and I feel like it's just been really, really easy as well. So thank you so much for giving up some of your evening to chat to me. What
Oh.
what can we promote for you? Tell me all the
So
things.
Ruby Hastings Writes Her Own Story is available from HarperCollins, and
Hmm.
you can buy it at all of the places online where you buy your books. So, Amazon, Waterstones, all of that.
Hmm.
I am at Rachel C. Dailey on Twitter and Instagram. My portfolio, and if you want to hire me to pay me for work, rachelcharltondailey.com. I am also, what else do I need to promote? I don't think I need to promote anything else, actually. That's quite good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, but I'm terrible at TikTok. At Rachel C. Daly. That is it.
amazing,
I write a sometimes occasional column for the Mirror, and I also write for the Big Issue. You can find those things by searching my name and the publications.
amazing. Thank you so
There you go.
much.